Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. That depends
Hi,
on where.
Paul.
Hi,
Morning.
yes. Good afternoon from here. Hi, Prof. Joel. You're welcome. If you are muted, you can check your mic.
Good morning. I said good morning from my side.
Yes, okay. Yeah, right. We can hear you all clearly. So what happened is that we had a third speaker, Nancy, who from the DRC, but unfortunately she has to attend to medical emergency, so she will not be able to join us for this session. So it will just be us gentlemen to do justice to the discussion for today. I'll be the moderator for the session as well as the hosts. And of course, once we wrap up, we also have a special guest with us who will also make some few comments on everything that's happened within these last 2 days. So I want to say a big welcome to all of you. So we are the ICC, the Institute of Certified Chartered Economists. We are a global professional body providing certification in economics for the chartered economists. So what we are doing is to bring together economists from all over the world through a certification, of course, but also through some of the platforms that we are creating in the form of the GEIF, the Global Economic Ideas Festival that we have. We have some webinars, we have some research paper publications and all of that. So we're just trying to create a platform to make voice of economists heard in a very coordinated way. So that is why we, together with our partners like the Young Global Economic Society, put together the GEIF. So this is the second edition, actually. We did our first edition last year, also virtual, and we are doing the second edition this year as well. We started off yesterday. It's a 2-day journey, and we are coming to the end of the 2 days, which is today, and this happens to be last and final. So we saved the best for the last, so we're hoping to have very insightful conversation here this morning, this afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. So we've scheduled emails, so I'm sure that others will join, the participants will join us, even though we're going to be kickstarting the session. We are going to be recording this session, so it will be made available permanently on our YouTube channel. We share with our audience, and of course also with you as well, so you can also share with your network. We're very privileged to have both of you to join as a panelist. So a bit of introduction. Balu or Ramaswamy is a development scholar. He's a writer. He's a development activist and a leadership trainer as well. And of course, we have Professor Joe Bosco Monte, who is the founder and president of the Brazil Africa Institute and the coordinator for Brazil Africa Forum, which, if I got the date correct, I think ended yesterday. I'm sure it might be busy for you, and you still made the time to join us today, even as you just ended your forum. And we're so much grateful that you can still make the time to join us for today's discussion. Yes, so I got your, okay, so you sent the message on WhatsApp. Okay, that's fine. Check it out. So we are very privileged that we have the chance to discuss a very important issue, which borders around what we call the BRICS. So we wanted to get an African angle, but I'll try and come in as and when to also, share some few points from the African perspective as well, even though I'm the moderator. So we are going to be discussing what we call the BRICS at the forefront of a new global development agenda. What next? I'm sure all of us are very familiar with the recent 15 BRICS summit that was held in Johannesburg in South Africa, where the BRICS as a bloc met, as they've been doing annually over the last couple of years that has been in existence. And so what happened in South Africa was quite significant, especially the events that were hovering around it, even leading to that, the summit itself. We're talking about whether President Putin of Russia will be in attendance and what it means for the entire BRICS bloc and South Africa as a host, and the African as a bloc, and of course, the anticipation of the acceptance of new members we're talking about over 20 or so countries that are already applied to join the BRICS bloc and what it means. More conversation about new financing model that will be made available. And of course, in Africa, since it's being held in Africa, there was a lot of conversation happening in Africa in terms of what it means for Africa as a continent. Having only just Africa in there, and of course, looking at the size of South Africa in terms of the BRICS, founding members. There are a lot of questions that are being asked and how that even fit into the broader context of Africa's development agenda. We have for ourselves the Agenda 2063. We have the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, which is even had a secretariat here in Accra, Ghana, where I am. And so there are a lot of, discussion themes, being discussed around the BRICS that happened in South Africa. And obviously, no one can doubt the fact that the BRICS bloc is very significant in terms of now, even in terms of their size, in terms of their GDP contribution to the world, their size in terms of population-wise, and looking at how a number of countries in the global south are all lining up and showing interest to be part of the BRICS. So it's very significant. I mean, when it started off in early 2000, really not much, credit or attention was given until now. Even when earlier on they gained momentum, it's actually sort of, died down a bit in terms of what people anticipated to be their influence in our world today. But clearly, leading the event leading to the 2023, which happened in August in Johannesburg, showed that it still has the momentum, it still has the capacity. And looking at the countries that have now been accepted, the 6 new countries, we have Argentina in Southern America, we have Egypt, we have Ethiopia, from Africa, we have Iran and Saudi Arabia. So these are all, and of course, Ethiopia, Egypt, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Argentina. So these are all, Argentina, significant countries that have been invited to join the BRICS bloc based on their own strategic positioning and, of course, the size and how significant they matter in their respective regions. So it's clear that we are seeing different kind of momentum when it comes to our global development agenda. And we can see that the BRICS, now and going forward, is going to be even play more crucial role. But as to how we can align that to the global economic development interest is what we are delving deeper into. So the session is in 2. So the first set is when I get opportunity to ask a certain round of questions to both of you gentlemen. And then in the course of conversation, we'll be inviting our people that are going to join us to also send in their questions if they have through the Q&A button that we have, so we can also read out the question to them. So that's going to be the order of the day, but we'll just begin the conversation now. So I'll start with Balu. It's okay if I call you Balu, because I think that's—
Please call me Balu, yeah.
Okay, perfect, yeah. So as a global development scholar, having a blend of grassroots and macro perspective on development policies, how do you think the BRICS countries collectively influence the global development agenda in recent years? And what key achievement can be highlighted? Just to kind of give your broader perspective on the whole BRICS and what it means for the world, what they've done, what they're doing now, and what can be possible going forward to our world with the BRICS have been increasing their numbers in terms of new membership.
Thanks, Paul, for the introduction and laying the sort of introduction to this whole session itself. I think, like you mentioned, BRICS plays an important, I would say, a grouping of people, of countries, which are now shaping the economic narrative too. But that being said, we should also keep in mind that you cannot really call it as one homogeneous entity, because each member country of the BRICS is a very unique, different kind of, brings different kind of an economic strength to the game. And possibly, well, there are lessons learned for each other. We also need to appreciate that each is unique in a cultural context, in a civilizational context, and also in the economic context. And therefore, that makes it very, very different, the diversity of thoughts that they bring into this model. My view is that, especially after the recent G20, where India was a presidency and Brazil going to take over the presidency next year, it's had a very unique opportunity to shape the narrative around the world, which two countries in rapid succession, which is part of the BRICS grouping, able to bring out what it means is important for the whole world at large. So I think for the first time, we are going to have a situation where two member countries of BRICS is going to actually continue the presidency and all three were from the south, from the global south. After Indonesia, it was India, and now it's going to be Brazil. So that I find is very unique. The kind of voice they can have, they have a place at the table now, and it's being taken seriously. Till recently, they were just seen as under grouping, right? And now it's increasingly being given some space. Now, the talks of common currency, the talks of so much of trade. I'm not going to get into all that. But more importantly, I'm going to focus on 2-3 dimensions. The first is the political dimension. So there is a political recognition around the world for this grouping, which necessarily has an economic bearing. And if I would say that the continuity of the ideas that came out in G20. First is 3 or 4 ideas, and a couple of them you already mentioned in the background that you gave. The first is the idea of the 4 Ps that Prime Minister Modi mentioned in the Delhi Declaration. It's a combination of all 4: its planet, its profits, its peace, and prosperity. So in a world which is now troubled by war and conflicts all over, it's quite important that we speak of these 4 and call it out. And so I thought that was one thing which set the narrative. The second was the recognition that any one small grouping by itself cannot make a change around the world. And therefore, inviting African Union to be part of G20 was a very significant step. So this expansiveness of thinking, which I think is an output of this kind of the BRICS approach. And that's something which I thought we should also put it out there. And the third is re-questioning the very understanding of sustainable development goals. And talking about it not just from economic growth, and talking about it from equity, inclusiveness, fairness, justice, and how do we see it? And this kind of a space where this global south and their views getting articulated was again part of this. And so I think it's going to be taken to the next level. To me, there are challenges in the BRICS nations, which we have to look at it here. Typically, global institutions where only, whether it's the World Bank, the IMF, or any kind of a UN grouping, were dictated by the loud mandate of the global north. Reshaping it and repositioning this global financial institutions and calling out for reforms was also, I think, part of the voice that came from this. I don't separate out India from the BRICS context because we see ourselves as part of the whole, the larger design. And to me, this addresses some of the inequalities that exist in the multilateral funding financing world. I also felt that the looking at innovative finance models and talking about it, and what is very, very significant is something that we need to really look at it is, for me, from coming from the social sector space and human development, finding new mechanisms of funding social sector investments. Well, it's easy to, or it's more easier to find money for infrastructure growth. It's always a challenge for this sector to find support from various sources. And so what is important is in these 5 nations in BRICS, Brazil was the first country in the world to talk of a social stock exchange. So right from 2003, they experimented. Well, they didn't succeed, but at least they set the ball rolling. South Africa tried, and they had a different model. And India announced in 2019 setting up a social stock exchange. So out of the 14 exchanges or partial exchanges or the exchange equivalents in the world, it is significant that 3 of them come from the BRICS combination. And like I said, all 14 of, whether it's developed economies like London or Singapore or the US or Canada, where they had their own failures. But India, in its way, setting up the social stock exchange in 2019 and looking for alternate financing models for investments in social sector development is something very, very significant. So to me, I just laid out the philosophical paradigms of shift and the change that is happening. It's not just a grouping for looking at integrating economies. It's not just a grouping for trade and for setting up banks or looking at currencies, but I think shaping the paradigm. And the last point I want to bring, which India brought to the G20 narrative was the concept of life, where we said that while economic growth is generally macro context spoken of, understanding that each of us to make development sustainable and economic gains inclusive has to take personal responsibility. And so lifestyle for the environment, the narrative that India shaped, and leading to a lifestyle economy where the shift from just an economic model driven around shareholder thinking to a stakeholder approach, or sort of from a profit maximization outlook, whether it's the state or the in terms of policies, or the corporate world in terms of response to policies, to a benefit optimization model. So I think this entire shift in thinking and exploring post-COVID new economic orders has begun, and I think that is the kind of contribution that finally I think nations like BRICS, especially in the context of Brazil quickly following up India as the G20 presidency, can shape not just for this region, but I think for the global economic narrative itself. And I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, Balu. I think those are very key points, and of course, especially when you mention about the new financing, innovative financing model that is required. Because I mean, so we fit into my question that will come up later, as we try to, because as we know, countries in the global south have been there's been huge advocates happening for new financing model that has been given impetus to the BRICS own new development bank, and what can be done differently in terms of the financing options that are available to countries, BRICS countries, of course, all countries in the global south as they forge that. So I'll come back to you on that as I go to Joel for his first round of questions. So Joel, I just wanted to give you the chance to give your first remarks on the issue that we're discussing about the BRICS at the forefront of a new global development agenda. So what next? So I just wanted to give you the chance to also, broadly speaking, from your experience, from the work that you're doing between Brazil and Africa, which is quite huge and significant, all feed into this South-South collaboration and all. So I just wanted to come in here from your point of view. Yeah.
All right, Paul, thank you very much for the opportunity to join this very important discussion. Balu, I think I pronounced it correct. If I did it.
Perfect.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks. It's a pleasure being with you, sharing the same oxygen, even virtually. And now we used to use this platform to engage, but now as the world is more open, we are not. It's not so often having virtual meetings. Yesterday we finished the Brazil Africa Forum. It was our 11th edition of the forum. It was a good moment, and we had a good conversation around the BRICS, because I understand BRICS plays an important role. The 5 countries, and now we have 6 more members of this club. I don't like a lot using the word block, because for me, to be a block, it should be more, let's say, more prepare for it. So sometimes we do not understand, even myself, what the BRICS is about, because we are talking about so many different scenarios. But I will say club rather than block. I remember at the beginning of this agenda, when the 4 countries started to discuss. When I say 4, I'm talking about before the participation of South Africa. We had 4 different countries: Brazil, Russia, India, and China. 4 different scenarios, 4 different geographies, 4 different economies, 4 different languages. So we had many differences rather than coincidences. And this maybe was the beauty of this engagement, because we had people in different geographies, people and economies, countries that could play individually an important role in the area where they were located, but together they could play a very big role in terms of engaging with the economy. I like the title of this conversation, the BRICS at the forefront of the global development agenda, the new global development agenda. It's important because these economies, they has a significant importance in the discussion about where the world we go through. What is the next movement of the world? This question should combine the importance of these countries. And then we had South Africa join the club, representing. This was maybe the main idea, having the African face in this club. But when South Africa came, I understand it was a important moment, because the economy of South Africa, the size of South Africa, the importance in the global market for South Africa was not the same as we had for the four first members. And then now there is a very important moment. I was in South Africa in Johannesburg for the BRICS, for the meeting. I was in the following President Lula and his delegation, and then after we went to Angola for a official visit. But there in South Africa, we had a sense that the group expanded in the way that other members became to this environment to have a participation. But what was for me the most important discussion and the idea was, now we have small economies, not so let's say great scaled countries that could provide commodities, countries that doesn't have a tough economy, countries where inflation is around. So how and why economies such Argentina and Ethiopia should join this environment? And for me, was the most important aspect of the new BRICS. I think we have to consider. And BRICS, maybe the BRICS plus, that's what people start to say, because now we have 11 countries. Can you imagine having the same room, Argentina, Iran, China, Brazil, Ethiopia, Egypt? So these countries are very different. And in this regard, Balu and Paul and the audience, we need to see one very important aspect, which is the individuality of each country. If we put everybody in the same room with different scenarios, different sizes, this, for me, it's very important, because although Argentina is not a big economy, it represents a very important political aspect of the group, because Argentina is one of the important countries in South America besides Brazil. If we go to Ethiopia in the region where the country is located in Africa, represents a very important aspect of demography, right? But also geography. And Ethiopia has also the importance of holding the African Union. Politically, this means something. So I understand what we have now, looking to the BRICS as maybe a driver of the agenda for the world, the new development agenda. I think it's very important, because all of them together, they can combine efforts. And I want to raise something specifically for Brazil. As a Brazilian, I have more information, and I have the privilege to know in advance some activities that we do in Brazil, and I want to share in this session. Brazil will lead soon the G20, which it's a very important agenda, and there is a discussion that people say that, is it possible that the BRICS will be more important than the G20? I don't want to go in this direction, because the G20 has its own importance, but I don't see as a bloc, as a group, the importance as I do see in an individual perspective. So if you look to the 20 participants of the G20, which is more than G20. Recently, the African Union were invited to be part of the G20. What is the importance of the African Union? Politically, it's very important because the representative of the African Union, when goes to the G20 at the meeting, this phase will represent the group of countries in Africa, the 54 countries. So it's not, which is not easy. But now we have the BRICS, and Brazil will play a role, important role, because G20, but also there is another entity, another geography that Brazil will represent, which is Mercosur, which is economic bloc. You mentioned, Paul, the Africa Free Continental Trade Area, which is for me it is a landmark. For me, is the most important agenda in the world that we should consider because of the size, because of the dimension. If we have everything organized as the African Union, Afrexim Bank, African Development Bank, other continental entities, bodies had in mind. I understand you are in Accra, where we have the secretariat of the agenda of the African Free Continental Trade Area, and I think this is fundamental. So if we put together Mercosur, if we put together the Free Continental Trade Area, and also other initiatives that we have within these countries, I understand this could guide the new global development agenda, because trade is fundamental. If we do not consider the trade between the countries, we cannot go very far. And I'm going to finish, but before it, I understand that what happens when we have 11 countries together. Now that's what we have for the new when we have the new agenda, the new meeting in Russia in 2024. What will be considered when these players gather together in Russia? What will happen will be the trade between countries, and how the trade will happen between Iran and Argentina. Is it possible? Consider that we have more differences than coincidences, but we should see how this the bilateral conversation will happen, and then the leadership of the BRICS will play an important role. I will come to the leadership later, because this is very important for us to consider. I stop from now.
Very much, Joe. I think those are very insightful, especially when you brought in the angle of the kind of comparison, or the kind of debates that goes around the G20 and then the BRICS, as well as other groupings that are there. And of course, it's very the BRICS, as to the kind of new shape is going to take, how the deliberations are going to happen with the new members, and of course, I'm sure they are anticipating to even accept new members to the group, and how they're going to be still keep going and be influential, and what is going to be very key. But I'll go to Balu.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned earlier about the financing aspect that you mentioned, and it's very important because leading to the BRICS again forum in South Africa. From African perspective, of course, one of the things that we look out for, we cannot stop talking about the kind of financing gap that we have on the continent, and how we even look at even leading to that. First, of course, the gap that we have. Again, looking at the current debt situation that a number of countries in the continent are in now, trying to offset both. So now you need financing, of course, But then again, you also have debt-related issues. So these were, conversations that were happening in Africa. My outfit itself, we even hosted a whole dialogue on Africa's interests vis-a-vis the BRICS on interest as well. So I just wanted to find out from you briefly about the financing model and that what do you see as a BRICS, starting based on the new development bank, which are formerly the BRICS bank, and what kind of capacity that they are supposed to have, and how that can also change the financing model or source of financing for countries in the global south, because obviously it's one of the key things that look out for trade, and of course they so need financing in so many aspects of the economy. So I just wanted to touch on that as well.
I'll possibly, for this purpose of the discussion, just look at one, I wouldn't call it an innovation, possibly it's constantly evolving. And so it started off as innovation. I'll just stay focused on that, especially looking at social impact and social impact bonds from the country's perspective. Now, why is it important? For the first time, I think it shapes the narrative from looking at money coming from outside to democratizing participation in the development process within a country. I think that's the uniqueness of the model. And if you look at, I'll just use the emerging model of India itself as an example. The recent last 8 to 10 years, the Indian economic model, which more than 1/3 of the national GDP was in the hands of people in terms of savings. Essentially, the culturally and civilizationally, India paid a lot of attention to long-term thinking in terms of savings. And so the storyline that we all grew up with is when you earn money, you save first, and then you look at spending. And so that means our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren have to be taken care of, and then we worry about ourselves. That has been shifted. And so if you look at a national stock exchange, which is highly technologically driven and a newer exchange, close to 80 million people already participate in the last 8 to 10 years in terms of mutual funds in markets. The market realities are there. Now, can we use that model for a different kind of financing where the investments made by an individual pays off for him as dividends? So I think shifting the thinking and expanding it to how do you really look at returns, not in economic gains, but looking at it in social returns? And that's like I said, it's not an innovation. It's been thought about the past. We look at impact investing. We look at whether the reports of gains, etc. There, a lot of information and data is that I'm not going to get into it. I'm going to stick to the principles for today. But that shift to saying that instead of looking at high net worth individuals and large players in this game, how do you democratize and get the small participants, which substantially add up when you aggregate? And so this social stock exchange, where it's an evolution. Right now, it's not even an exchange, I would call it. It's more a platform where people invest and look for social returns. And markets regulated. Earlier, in countries like India, and I'm sure I'm pretty confident about it in other countries too, where it was the responsibility of government to initiate social development, which it is still there everywhere. But the accountability of the social impact that was gained was more self-declared and hardly regulated. But today, when you get market forces to regulate this, it brings in a new paradigm, not just on the investments made on development, but on the returns that come from development also. Eventually, this could evolve into possibly shaping social credits, trading social credits, and in a world which is moving rapidly towards ESG for corporate world, this becomes a good instrument. And if this can be expanded to just looking beyond just one country and looking into, like, I like what Joe said about the club, the BRICS club, and if more countries participate, just imagine the population size that can effectively participate in each other's development and not look towards the global north and existing global institutions for financing alone. So I think the best way, one is reforms of these institutions in the governance structures, reforms of these institutions in the way money is spent and prioritized, but more importantly, eroding away the relevance and the, I wouldn't say credibility, but I would say the monolith structures of power that they exercise over global south into shaping it into a democratic process in the global south. I think that is a very big movement towards it. To me, that is the innovation part, where it is no longer the deep pockets kind of a situation that initiates and sustains development, but the small man on the street who could participate in the social sector investment scene and then participate in development. So it is democratizing participation, it's democratizing accountability, it's democratizing the entire economic gains to a social sector momentum. So to me, I'm less worried about the investments made in other areas. But what is also significant is, like, China has got the BRI model. This is something which all of us have to seriously look at now. India has started the Middle East corridor, where the clear understanding that every country has got important trade routes, if you can call it that. In the past also, historically, there have been trade routes, but now developing infrastructure to match it and sharing the cost of infrastructure, and therefore sharing the gains that come from this infrastructure, is a new approach to looking at how people can strengthen trade, strengthen commerce, at the same time share cost and drive economic gains along clusters built around these corridors. So which internally used to happen in countries, now shaping it across. For example, though it doesn't involve the BRICS equation, the Middle Eastern corridor can go up to possibly touch up to Russia now. So we could explore it in various ways. And I think these are important configurations that are emerging, which again shifts the financing models, because now the multi-country participation in infrastructure growth leading to economic gains. There is within the country, there is about this democratization models. So I think I would stick to these two. And the third is reforming large global institutions. For too long, they've been held under the hegemony of certain powerful political voices. It is funny that you sit in Washington or in New York and decide how development can happen in Mozambique or Tanzania. I think now reshaping the narrative to a BRICS bank or an ADB or these kind of new kind of financial institutions is an upcoming model which needs to be strengthened. Now, these are not really as strong and as powerful as what it should have become by now, but I'm hoping that with the emergence of this demand for relooking at it, restructuring it, and making it more relevant, especially from the sustainable development goal perspective, I think they will be pressurized to actually reform. So reforms and demanding reforms is now articulated and coming from these configurations, the Global South configurations. So to me, these are all like I said, I wouldn't even call it innovations, I would call it evolutions in the space of financing.
Balu. So yeah. I want to go to Prof. Joe. I think we all know, as you gave the background first, it's 2-in-1 kind of question that I wanted to ask. So the first one is going to be the leadership of the BRICS. We all know that it's very important for BRICS to be very significant in our world, to champion the new global development agenda as we've been discussing. Obviously, leadership is very core in terms of the internal structures that they are putting in place, in terms of the new members that might be joining. So we wanted to get a sense of what could happen, in terms of the leadership, front of the BRICS, and how they can be formidable and be able to help, of course, build on the vision that they've already started. And again, I want to link it to Africa. I mean, partly so because we've been working very much so in Africa context. So I just wanted to add a question about that in terms of what African countries or governments needs to do in order to be able to secure and sustain a kind of relationship with the BRICS, country. Because obviously, I'm not sure we're going to see all 54, 55 countries of Africa joining the BRICS group now. So what must be done? When you mentioned about even earlier one was just the 4 countries, and now South Africa was added because of the significance of South African economy. Now we have Egypt and Ethiopia being part of it. So in the context of the African continent, of course, you also mentioned about AFTA, which I mentioned earlier as well. What must African government do in order to be able to secure, long-term, sustainable, kind of win-win situation with the BRICS agenda?
For me, I think it's an error when we want to have Africa as a continent in this club, right? Because if we do this, we may call South America to join the club. We may invite Asia to come to the club. What I do see is the participation of individual country that doesn't represent the continent. Brazil doesn't represent South America in the BRICS, as Russia doesn't represent what? Europe, Asia in this group. But when we bring a country such Ethiopia or Egypt to this group of countries, the participation of each individual, I'm sorry to repeat, individuality, but there is no other way to describe the relation that we have is for a country. I don't see South Africa representing the continent, because South Africa represents itself, the country itself. But of course, when we have a South African in the room, we may see a face of the continent, but doesn't mean that we have a continent being represented in the agenda, in the discussion. I can come back to the moment when South Africa were invited to join. It was a direct movement that was made by Russia. At that time, Russia had some interest in having a space in the Africa context, and the political discussion at that time was provoked by Russia, and then South Africa was invited to join. And now we had other geographies invited, and for Brazil, having Argentina around is important. Why? Because Brazil has a significant approach and discussion and interest with Argentina for political ties, for ideology as well. So if we have Argentina in the group, it will be good for Brazil. So that's why Brazil defended the participation of Argentina. I don't see the discussion, Paul, as Africa being represented in the group. Africa will be represented as South America and Asia, because we have countries from these continents. But I want to come to a point that I mentioned before, leadership, which is for me very important. I would say even fundamental, crucial. Every year, the BRICS, they meet in one specific moment, in one specific space. We had the meeting once in Fortaleza, which by the way is my hometown. We had the meeting in Durban. We had the meeting in South Africa this year. That's when people meet. And also we have some meetings around the BRICS, Minister of Health, Minister of Finance. But the most important moment is during the annual meeting. But there is no leadership like we have the G20. We had India. We still have India until December. So India guides the agenda. India until December guides where we're going to. Next year, Brazil will give the direction. We should go north. We should go south. We should do this and that. We don't have this. So the Prime Minister of India gave the direction. He was the leader of the group. He was the leader of the G20. President Lula will guide the conversation. In 1 year, the preference of agenda will be directed by Brazil. Of course, this is a discussion. People, they have some involvement, but you have one voice that guides, that give the direction. We don't have this in the BRICS. So it's a combination of efforts, and we don't know where we're going to, because we have no a specific moment or direction and where and how we do things. But I want to emphasize another, for me, it's a weakness of the group. Besides don't having a leadership, we don't have a document, right? What each country will do according to this statute, we don't have. Could be some other name that we would point. So if we don't have a structure, a formal structure, what each country would be able to do, what country, what agenda we should formulate. Sometimes we don't know where we go. Sometimes we don't know where what we should do. And the other weakness that I see, there is no specific space where this agenda could take place in a structured way. I give an example. If you go to the African Union, if you go to Mercosur, if you go to the European Union, you go to Brussels, you go to Addis Ababa, or you go to Montevideo, taking these three specific economic bloc agenda. We don't have this for the BRICS, and then that's why I don't see it as a bloc, because there is no headquarter, for instance. And then comes to something very important that I insist. We have the BRICS, but now have the new development bank, which is the Bank of the BRICS. And for me, looks like the Bank of the BRICS, it's more important, has more importance than the BRICS itself, because the new development bank has a leader, right? The former president of Brazil, President Dilma, is the president of the BRICS. Of course, next in 2025, if I'm not mistaken, she will be replaced by someone else. We have Shanghai as the office, the headquarters of the BRICS, but also you have a document that guides what the bank will do, where the money can be used, what kind of projects. So people now are more concentrated in the bank, the new development bank, the Bank of the BRICS, than the BRICS itself. And this for me is a weakness. It's fragmented. The club is fragmented because we don't see the importance of the club as we saw in the past. Maybe because we have more people, more countries around. And if we do not have a leadership, it will not bring good results in the near future. And I don't see, I'm sorry to say that, but I don't see a leader that guides the group towards a agenda. The development of the new agenda, I think it's important to consider, and each country has a important, let's say, an important aspect when we see individually. So I stop now to give opportunity for the Q&A moment.
Yeah, thank you very much, Joe. I think what you've given a very deeper perspective on the leadership structure than I've myself been imagined in terms of even the African context, because they bundle everything together, as we have South Africa in the BRICS, so therefore we have the entire African continent in the BRICS. I think those points are very important, that South Africa is in there engaging in the Britain issue as South Africa as a country, and that is very important, and so as the new members that have joined the BRICS bloc. I think we are currently heading into the final phase, so we are receiving questions from our participants. If you have any questions, please kindly use the Q&A button. I think Prof. Joao will leave us in some 7 or so minutes, because he has other engagement, and of course we'll round up with Balu as well. So we have a question from Jennifer. Balu, if you have any comments, you can make as well.
Yeah.
So you said that, Joao, you spoke about the leadership difference between the G20 and the BRICS. So is there any coordination mechanism in terms of aligning priorities between the overlapping members of the G20 and the BRICS, like Brazil, India, and South Africa? So it's a very, so he's talking about the alignments in terms of priorities, because you have countries that are part of, for example, even in the context of India. I wanted to even ask a question in connection to that. So recent issue about even the BRI. So you have India, which is with China at BRICS, but it's not part of the BRI yet. So how do you align the priorities of the G20 and the BRICS at the block? I think any of you maybe start with Balu, and then you all will just wrap up before you.
I'll just build on what Joe said, and my view is that he sort of articulated beautifully about the context of leadership. Now, leadership always operates in a context, and the context of BRICS is a more loose coming together rather than a structure mechanism to actually deliver on some intended stated outcomes. Whereas G20, on the other hand, has evolved over time the very strong structured mechanisms. We have Sherpas, then there are coordinators, every country does its bit, and then it takes over. But the plus of G20 in terms of structure can also be a minus, because what happens is any investments in growth and development is generational and long-term. So unless ideas are built upon, I always, in my mind, I compare it to small little organizations like the Lions Club or Rotary Club in a small town, where the president keeps changing every year. And therefore, he has his own priorities. So that kind of a specific leadership, which without continuity in paradigms and principles that is mutually agreed upon, can also be a minus. So we'll have to just keep, I'm just saying the strength and weakness of a structured mechanism and non-structured mechanism. But that being said, what are the opportunities? And to me, the uniqueness of leadership that we saw in India in the G20 presidency is we reshaped the economic narrative to beyond economics. And that's something extremely critical, because it's not just the economic consequences that emerge when money is spent on investment and human capital. It's also about economic consequences that emerge from investments in human and social capital. And therefore, India actually reshaped the narrative in 2-3 different ways. And that's something for us as a model for BRICS even, and for the global development agenda too. The first thing is recognition that we need to really look at the scenario larger than just economic gains. Because every time the conversation would be around the economy, trade, and commerce, but we shifted it to focusing on sustainable development goals. We shifted it to focus on science and science sharing of information. India shifted the focus to One World, One Health discussions, where we said after COVID, that's so significant, and that's got huge economic impacts, and all countries have learned from it. It shifted the thinking between from looking at financing as mere ODAs or overseas development assistance to something else, and how do we look at it? So that narrative also got shifted to reforms of sectors. But I also think another significant thing which people don't talk about is India introduced formally on the stage, global stage, the narrative of women-led leadership. Now, if you look at it, if you look at the entire combination, if you look at the participants, if you look at people, gender is a critical thing which is so visible by being invisible. And I think that is something brought onto the table. So this integration of multiple streams of thinking being brought back to the economic platform and showing that you have to look at development as one whole context, or something which a leadership that we spoke about a few minutes ago can actually help shape. I think there are opportunities for aggregations like this. We should not just look at economic outcomes that happen when whether it's a block or it's a club or whatever mechanisms we have. There are other opportunities too. Now, development, whether anybody likes it or not, in all these countries are state initiated. It may not be completely state controlled or state led, but it's definitely state initiated, which means the state's capacities and state's capabilities to deliver on governance, state's capacities to deliver to its citizens' development is going to be either constrained by or supported by public administration structures. And so information that can be shared across public administration mechanisms in these groupings, I think, are also lessons to be shared, because that's going to have an impact on economic development. So we should not say so focused on the trees that we miss out the forest. So I think, and that's shifting the narrative to forest. The last point I want to make is the leadership's articulation. I won't say in as many words, is if you looked at the mood, it is not just political bragging and saying voice of the global south, or we should get ideas of the global south. But to me, and the lessons for the BRICS configuration, the lessons for African nations is that we shifted the thinking and mindset from a resource constraint approach, like saying that we don't have this, we don't have that, so we don't have infrastructure, we don't have human talent. to looking at what do we have and shifting the framework from a resource constraint to a abundance mindset. So, and building development from that space, which I think is a good place to begin. And that is what we should look at, and not look at just what are the lessons that are there. Because the Western nations it's an easy game. Wealth can easily beget wealth. So what do we see as wealth, redefining it and moving away from a resource constraint thinking to an abundance mindset? I think are opportunities that leadership framed in the G20 sequence. And if my hope and request is President Lula would be possibly building on this and taking it to the next level. And therefore, every nation builds on it rather than replaces it with their own ideas. And if that can happen, the structures will have some meaning. I'll stop here.
Thank you very much. So, Prof. Joao, I think we'll just hear from you briefly, and then, of course, you can exit us as well on this question about the aligning the priorities of the G20 and the BRICS, and any last comment that you have on this discussion. Yeah.
All right, Paul. Thank you very much. I'm sorry that I need to run because I have other people from my previous commitments. But I want to raise a point that Balu mentioned about gender and equality. I think we have to consider that the world is so fragmented now, and the leaders of a bloc or a club, when we talk about the BRICS and also G20 and others, right? We should emphasize that we have the individuality of each country, but we are united. So when they come together to a agenda, should be a agenda that brings opportunities for everybody. And then I see each country with its own, let's say, problems, but we should see assets. What kind of opportunities each country in this club, Argentina, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Emirates, how they can be together. And again comes the leadership. We should have someone that brings the agenda of each representing every singular country, but the agenda that brings a united efforts to bring results for everybody. Trade, as I mentioned, it's important, right? But also other agenda. What about sustainability? What about environment? Brazil will host in 2025 the COP 30th. And during the Brazil Africa Forum, we discussed about environment. If we do not consider environment perspective, it will be very difficult to see progress in the economy, but also in the human being aspect. So if we do not bring to this consideration, we're going to discuss this in Dubai soon, in 1 month time for the COP28. So the leadership for me, it's fundamental, and we should see in the near future for the BRICS, but also for the G20, a dimension of multi-task, multi-discussion, because although we are singular, we should be united. And the global agenda, the development of the global agenda should consider these countries. How can we leave China out of the conversation? How can we leave Russia out of the discussion? Brazil as well plays a very important role because of its dimension. But also we have small countries. Maybe in the next meeting of the BRICS in Russia next year, other countries will come. Where the countries will come from? They represent their own needs, but they can be considered as part of the solution. And the solution should be considered using many hands, all hands possible, right? So my consideration now is the importance of the BRICS. It's there, but we should be more pragmatic and precise. When I see countries discussing in a bilateral movement, it's fundamental bilateral, but it should bring a multilateral conversation to bring answers and good results for everybody. I stop now.
Thank you very much, Prof. Joao. Yes, so that's Prof. Joao from Brazil Africa Institute and also coordinator for the Brazil Africa Forum. Thank you so much for joining us. And as you mentioned earlier, you have other prior engagements. We thank you so much for making the time. Thank you. Yeah. So thank you. So I'll be coming to Balu now, so that we can be wrapping up soon. So my question, and then you can add your last comments on everything that we discussed. It's about what you see the BRICS doing differently to sort of build on their momentum, build on their influence, in quotes, in the global south, especially in the global south. So what do you see the BRICS doing differently to ensure that they continue to be relevant in the new global development agenda that they've started, and also being able to influence, some of the development agendas, especially in the global south going forward? And then you can add your last comment as well.
Thanks, Paul. I'll possibly combine the two, your answer to your question as well as my last comments. See, my way of looking at it and my way of looking at human development itself is slightly different. And therefore, the development agenda should not spring from a plain income growth perspective. So I think we need to now explore newer economic models, because I personally believe the existing models are not sustainable. So a model like looking at the economy that can result from absorbing the good of the public sector, absorbing the social intent of the social sector, and looking at private sector efficiencies and combining the DNA of all this to build a for-benefit economy, which is driven by compassionate capitalism. So it's still a marketplace. Is something which these kind of nations can actually start, because as you're shaping a new narrative, it's better to shape a narrative that is sustainable and applicable to the whole world. The second thing I find is this BRICS nations, especially nations like Brazil and India and China, have a rich civilizational history embedded with what I think is an ignored knowledge system. I consider that traditional knowledge and indigenous knowledge systems are very critical, and we generally, when you look at everything with an economic lens, we see the poor to be ignorant. We equate poverty to ignorance, and I think that's a big danger. Traditionally, communities have embedded traditional wisdom, which could possibly offer new economic ideas and solutions for development itself. So demystifying this equation and trying to deconstruct this into something more tangible and operationable are the contributions that these countries can do. That's the second way of looking at it. How do you tap into community wisdom and apply that community wisdom into larger national and global narratives of development? The third way I look at it is, we live in a world where if COVID can spread from one country to another at such a rapid pace, and we just credit the virus for it, why not we look at other viral interventions? The way social media looks at viral, something goes viral. What I mean by that is, we are all repeating investments on building human capital. So can we share human capital investments? Why are we not opening boundaries which can ensure free movement of not just trade and commerce, but free movement of knowledge? How many of us open up our research institutions to each other? How many of us open up our research findings to each other? How many of us have access to research outcomes which are closely guarded? Information is power, and science information is going to be superpower in a STEM economy-driven world. That's a reality today. Artificial intelligence and ML and all these things are driving the world. So can we create new configurations which talks about creating digital infrastructure which is shared? Can we look at creating digital universities which are shared? Why should everybody invest on knowledge creating platforms where it can be shared across all these countries? So just not looking at what contributes to economic growth for the benefit of mankind, and that sharing. So not just looking at economic growth and outcomes of economic growth, but looking at what contributes to the economic growth and how do you build infrastructure which can be shared across all these countries. So I think these are new development ideas, whether it is sharing investments on education, whether it's sharing investments on health. I know that even today, a lot of patients from Africa come to India for treatment. Why? If you even get patients from UK and other places for India for treatment, they come for cost. African nations come because it's accessible for the privileged Africans. But then why can't we make it in the spirit of one world, one health, try to have a mechanism where even those public infrastructures are shared across nations, if it's possible. I'm just giving you ideas. I'm not saying that we have to work out all the details. This is opinions. Like we can have financing models, like you can have a new development bank. Can we look at such kind of infrastructures which we can easily develop for financing? You want to have a localized SWIFT for financial transactions. Why not you have these kind of mechanisms where universities can be across? Models have been tried, the South Asian University, which is suffering because of political problems, but can we have these kind of structures? And the last point I want to make is, in these collaborations, they're generally seen as government collaborations. They're just seen as political equations. So can we look at people-to-people collaborations? And that is what is going to drive peace. Now, you want a conflict-free society, you got to build people-to-people partnerships and not just government-to-government partnerships. End of the day, governments always are trained to think in the space of international relations and geopolitics with personal national interest. But the moment you bring in a people equation to it, possibly you'll expand the idea. And to me, the real model would be, we cannot create the structures for global citizenships, but I'm sure we can create the mindset and behavioral patterns for thinking like a global citizen. And that will be the real contribution to the development agenda globally.
Thank you very much, Balu. I think all too soon we are coming to the end of our session. We are so much excited that we've been able to do this conversation. I'll be welcoming our special guest, Jennifer Blanke, to join us.
Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Balu. So great to see you. That was an excellent session. I learned so much in that session. And I think that you and Joao should be working together closely to coordinate all these things. Because I think it will make a real difference. At the end of the day, we talk a lot about institutions, but frankly, it's just people. People make the difference. They really make a difference. So I'm going to make sure that you guys are in touch with each other afterwards, because I think that I love that the GEIF is having impact on the ground, by putting, the experts together who need to be talking to each other. So wonderful to see you. And thank you for that. So I guess it's time to wrap up.
Yes.
So let me just, quickly just say a few words, because this has been an incredible couple of days. And what a wonderful way to end, thinking about the new structures that can actually make a difference, So this basically concludes the second edition of the Global Economic Ideas Festival, and I assume there'll be many more, Paul, if you and your team are up for it. It really has been 2 excellent days on topics that have been really wide-ranging, from climate finance to the digital economy to the future of globalization. As well as, the discussion we just heard on, the rise of international actors like the expanded BRICS. And importantly, I think the sort of theme, the red thread is, always with the goal of placing people and planet at the, center of focus. And that really has been, something that has been woven throughout all of the different discussions. I would like to thank all of the panelists and moderators for contributing their valuable time and expertise, and especially to the wonderful Franny Lautier for chairing the event and bringing this together. Thank you to all of the active participants for engaging with us on all of these critical issues that really matter so much for our collective future. And last but not least, I'd like to thank the Institute of Certified Chartered Economists, ICCE, for organizing and hosting the event, and especially to Paul, you and your team for all the hard work behind the scenes. We know how much it takes to make this important event happen. I very much look forward to next year when we will continue our collective learning and sharing adventure. Who knows, maybe it'll even be in person, if not next year, maybe the year after at some point. Look forward to that. And I really wish everybody an excellent day or evening, wherever you may be. And I wish everyone to be safe and healthy. And thanks everyone again. Paul, I will give you the last word.
Thank you very much. Yes, again, this has been brought to you by ICC, the Institute of Certified Chartered Economists. We'll be sharing further updates with all of you by email, of course, on how you can be a chartered economist at the ICC, irrespective of your level of career, where you are in your career, whether you are a recent graduate, or you work for a couple of years, or you work for 2 decades, you can still be a part of the ICC. We have different gateways that can allow you to be a member of the ICC. So that would be my last words, and we'll come your way again with GEIF 2024. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay.